It still feels impossible to imagine a Britain without her.
Breaking tonight, Keir Starmer's off-mic remark about Queen Camilla has set off a royal firestorm. At a glittering charity gala in Lancaster House, the Prime Minister finished his toast, smiled for the cameras, then leaned toward a colleague and whispered words never meant for air. The wrong woman wears the crown. Diana should have been queen. Within hours, the clip leaked, the internet erupted, and Buckingham Palace was said to be stunned, disgusted, and preparing an extraordinary response. Within minutes, the footage was clipped, subtitled, and shared. By dawn, it had gone viral on every platform from TikTok to BBC News. Commentators called it the most explosive sentence uttered by a British Prime Minister in modern history. Buckingham Palace sources described the initial reaction in 2 words: stunned and disgusted. For the royal family, this wasn't just a personal insult, it was a reopening of the deepest wound in recent British memory, the ghost of Diana, resummoned by a politician who should have known better. Reporters outside the palace described black cars arriving late into the night, phones were confiscated, curtains drawn, and royal aides instructed to say nothing to anyone. But inside Clarence House, silence spoke louder than any statement. Insiders say Camilla sat motionless for nearly an hour after hearing the clip. Her scheduled visit to a children's hospice was quietly canceled. One senior staffer whispered to the Telegraph, "Her Majesty took it as a cruelty, not a criticism." King Charles was said to be deeply hurt but not surprised. Friends of the monarch recall his words to a confidant that evening, "Public favor turns like wind, and some delight in stirring the dust." Prince William, however, was reportedly furious. According to sources close to Kensington Palace, he slammed his phone on the table after watching the clip and told aides, "He insulted my mother's memory for applause." The mood across royal residences grew colder by the hour. By morning, the palace's crisis communications team had entered full lockdown. Engagements were postponed, press officers pulled from other duties, Camilla was kept away from public cameras altogether. "We're treating this like a death in the family," one communications advisor told the Daily Mail, "only this time it's the death of respect." Royal photographers noted something unusual. No member of the family appeared in public for nearly 36 hours. For a household built on visibility, that silence was deafening. Downing Street, meanwhile, was an absolute meltdown. Labour's press team woke to an inbox of headlines reading, "Diana's Revenge" and "Camilla Humiliated." Inside number 10, the atmosphere turned toxic. One aide was overheard saying, "We spend months building bridges with the palace, and he burns them in one sentence." Emergency meetings stretched into the early hours as advisors debated whether to issue an apology or double down. Starmer chose defiance. When cornered by reporters outside Parliament, he refused to retract the words. "I was speaking as a son, not as a subject," he said, invoking his late mother's admiration for Diana. The statement ignited even greater fury across the establishment. Royal correspondents accused him of exploiting grief for politics. "He's rewriting royal history to score points with younger voters," one analyst told Sky News. Still, online, the comment was being celebrated as the first honest sentence ever spoken by a politician. Inside Labour, the divide was instant. Senior moderates begged Starmer to apologize publicly, warning that alienating the monarchy could cost him older, traditional voters, but younger MPs, emboldened by the viral storm, defended him fiercely. "He only said what millions believe," tweeted one backbencher. "Alright, nice. Diana should been queen" trended globally, amassing millions of shares in a matter of hours. On Reddit, entire threads debated whether Starmer had spoken truth to power or committed political suicide. The Conservative Party seized the moment with precision. Tory frontbenchers called the remark an attack on the crown itself, demanding Starmer's censure in the House of Commons. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted, "We can disagree on policy, but mocking the monarchy disgraces the office." By midday, Right-leaning tabloids had plastered both faces, Diana and Camilla, across their covers. One read, "The Ghost Returns," another, "A Queen Insulted, a Nation Divided." Television pundits replayed the clip on loop, slow-motioned and subtitled for effect. Body language experts dissected Starmer's smirk, comparing it to a man savoring a dangerous truth. Political analysts, however, saw something deeper, a test of Britain's fragile balance between modern politics and timeless monarchy. The question rippled across newsrooms: had the Prime Minister just declared himself a Republican in disguise? At Buckingham Palace, no official statement was issued, yet sources hinted at a measured response. Translation: the royal household was waiting to see whether the fire would burn out or consume the government itself. Behind the gates, staff spoke of a chill in the corridors, and a senior equerry reportedly remarked, "If Diana still haunts this place, she's smiling tonight." In the Commons, murmurs turned into open war. Opposition MPs heckled Starmer with chants of "Your Majesty's critic." During Prime Minister's questions, he faced relentless attacks, yet refused to back down. "I respect the crown," he said, but respect does not mean silence about history. His allies applauded. His enemies smelled blood. By sunset, the scandal had grown beyond a headline. It had become a national referendum on memory, love, and loyalty. The palace stood wounded, Westminster divided, and the ghost of Diana hovered once more over British politics. And in that tension, between reverence and rebellion, the country found itself staring at the same old question in a new voice. Who truly defines the crown, blood, or truth spoken aloud? The reaction came like a storm without warning. Across the country, cameras captured a Britain split clean down the middle. Outside London pubs, pensioners shouted at television screens, calling Starmer a disgrace to the crown. Yet across universities and cafes, younger voters applauded. Street interviews told the story better than any poll. A 23-year-old student in Manchester said, "He just said what everyone under 40 already believes." An elderly veteran in Portsmouth replied, "That man has no right to speak her name." By morning, vigils began forming outside Kensington Palace. Bouquets, hand-painted signs, and old magazine covers of Diana filled the gates. Some wept quietly, others whispered prayers. One placard read, "She still reigns in hearts." A woman from Cardiff told Sky News, "It feels like she's come back, not as a ghost, but as a reckoning." Drone footage showed the candlelight stretching down the street, flickering like a second coronation, one made not of gold, but of grief remembered. Polls reflected the fracture instantly. Labour's support among under 35s surged to record levels, while among monarchist voters, it collapsed overnight. Analysts called it the emotional realignment of a generation. For younger Britons, Starmer's words weren't blasphemy, they were honesty. To older generations, they were sacrilege. Online, the hashtag #BikeDianaShouldBeenQueen ruled social media for 3 straight days, gathering over 200 million impressions. Artists posted digital portraits of Diana with the caption, "The Queen We Chose." Even overseas, the story caught fire. American talk shows replayed the clip as if it were a royal scandal, and a political protest rolled into one. In Paris, billboards featuring Diana's face were graffitied with the word "justice." The emotional tide had crossed oceans. What started as an off-mic remark was now a referendum on monarchy, memory, and moral authority. But the palace wasn't about to stay silent. At precisely 7 a.m. on the third day, Buckingham Palace released a rare, sharply worded statement. "The crown stands above politics and should not be drawn into the ambitions or grievances of the government," it read. Such remarks are an affront to the dignity of the institution and to the late princess's own wish for unity. It was short, deliberate, and cold as marble. Within minutes, it dominated every front page in Britain. That afternoon, King Charles appeared unannounced at a veterans' memorial in Windsor. Standing before rows of soldiers, he spoke carefully. "Service means respect, not resentment." Duty means silence, even when words tempt us. It was the gentlest reprimand imaginable, but its message was unmistakable. Those close to the king said he had personally insisted on addressing the crowd, despite concerns from aides. The speech was replayed 1,000 times before nightfall, the crown defending itself not with fury, but with composure. Behind the scenes, royal allies began leaking stories to friendly outlets. Feature articles appeared highlighting Camilla's charity work with domestic violence shelters and literacy programs. Photos of her visiting hospitals resurfaced with captions about her quiet service. It was a soft counterattack, one designed not to strike Starmer, but to reclaim moral ground. Yet the tactic backfired. Online, users mocked the damage control parade, calling it too little, too late. Then came the most unexpected voice of all. Prince William appeared in a rare televised address, seated alone in a simple blue suit. His tone was calm, but every word carried the weight of a son's grief. "Some wounds," he said, "should not be reopened for politics. My mother's memory belongs to every person who loved her, not to those seeking power." His voice cracked slightly on the word mother. The clip went viral instantly. Even Starmer's supporters went quiet for a moment. By the end of the week, the tone across the nation had shifted. The outrage cooled into introspection. Commentators asked whether the monarchy had lost control of its own narrative, or whether this moment had reminded Britain why the crown still mattered. One BBC analyst summed it up best: "For the first time, the palace is defending itself not from scandal, but from democracy." Inside Westminster, the tremors grew louder. Constitutional lawyers began publicly debating whether Starmer's remarks violated the ministerial code by undermining the monarchy's neutrality. The question alone sent ripples through Parliament. Could a sitting prime minister face censure for offending the sovereign? No one could recall a precedent. Within Labour, the fault lines deepened. Reformists saw the uproar as a gift, a chance to argue for a modern republic built on truth. Loyalists, terrified of losing swing voters, warned it was madness to provoke the palace. Anonymous leaks hinted at late-night shouting matches in Downing Street. One senior advisor was quoted saying, "He's not just fighting the royals, he's fighting history." The rumors turned darker still. Palace insiders quietly suggested that Starmer might be barred from attending future royal functions, a move unheard of in British politics. That leak alone dominated the weekend headlines. "Prime Minister unwelcome at the palace?" screamed the Daily Express. Conservative MPs seized on it instantly, demanding the king protect the dignity of the monarchy. As the dust settled, Britain found itself staring into its own reflection. A nation arguing not just over one remark, but over what kind of country it wanted to be. In pubs and offices, people debated whether honesty had finally broken decorum, or whether decorum had strangled honesty for too long. The crown stood firm, the prime minister stood defiant, and the people stood divided between the two. The narrator's closing voice captured it all. This wasn't gossip, it was a revelation. A country confronting its oldest ghost, Diana's shadow still cast across modern Britain. Because when the crown and the commons collide, something ancient always breaks loose. The outro echoed through the screens as the final words appeared across the feed. Stay with us, because this isn't just a scandal. It's history rewriting itself in real time.